My name is Kevin Richards. I'm the Business Development Manager for Technology at the BDA, or Bermuda Business Development Agency. And I just want to thank the MOBI team for having me here today. And it's just fantastic to have sat through the presentations this morning and this afternoon. And I hope to meet as many of you as possible and get to networking this afternoon and tomorrow. In Bermuda, we really try to talk about the work, play, live story. And I think, with some of the pictures and the video, you can see that play and live story is pretty nice. But I'm going to focus a little bit on the work piece and just try to give you an overview of what we've been doing in the last 2 years on the technology side, but really ground ourselves in innovation from Bermuda's genesis, really. And for those of you who don't know too much about Bermuda, we're an British overseas territory. We've got a 400-year-old legal system, so that's the oldest legal system in our hemisphere, outside of the UK. And Bermuda has always been a self-governing British overseas territory. So we've been, charting our own course from the beginning, and that sort of genesis is grounded in the fact that we've got a very strategic location, which I'll show you in a slide or two. But traditionally, Bermuda has been a center for the U.S., Canadian, and British navies to base themselves in World War I and World War II. So as a result, we've got this very high level of infrastructure that we've built on over the years. Bermuda is obviously, as a British overseas territory, we're based in common law, but our currency is pegged to the U.S. dollar, so we have a one-to-one currency. And we've got infrastructure, as you saw in the video, across the board. We typically have between the second and eighth highest GDP per capita in the world. So it's a very wealthy island, and for our purposes, I think 92% of all residences have internet connectivity to their homes. So it's a very well-connected island and a very sort of highly educated population. So where is Bermuda? I know we've got folks from around the world here today, so I thought this slide would really help us really ground ourselves on where people dressed like this live. And we're about 600 miles east of Cape Hatteras. It's a 90-minute flight from Bermuda to New York, but we've got daily direct flights across the East Coast, daily direct flight to London, and so 5 hours from New York to LA. It didn't take me long to get here yesterday. So, it's a great location. We're an hour ahead of Eastern Standard Time. So doing business in Bermuda is very convenient for those of you who have global businesses, whether you're operating in the US, Europe, and it's a little bit tricky with Asia, but it's a lot more convenient than most locations. As I said, we've got 9 cities that we fly to, 7 different airlines. We've got one of the longest runways in the world, so Bermuda is the backup for NASA for Cape Canaveral and emergency landings, and we have a very close relationship with NASA as a result of that. We're building a new airport right now, so we're looking to try to see if we can deploy some of the new identity technologies in line with what we're building on the infrastructure side. So, really encouraged to talk to some of you later on about some of the identity solutions that you're building within your businesses. So if we just kind of move on to who I am, who we are, the people that you would most likely do business with to help you onboard into the country. So the Business Development Agency is basically your concierge for connecting into the country. We don't have a red carpet. We've got a red short service where we will introduce you to anybody you need to know in Bermuda, whether it's government, the regulator, or corporate service providers who will help you to establish your entity in Bermuda. We try to do this in a way that's as seamless as possible, and we really look at business the same way a lot of islands look at hospitality. We want to make your lives easy. We want to make doing business in Bermuda something that is as seamless as possible, and so we've got a team that's dedicated to supporting your needs. On the regulatory side, I think, as the video said, our regulator is sort of the showpiece for doing business in Bermuda. I'm sure you've all heard about the offshore world of finance not being as legitimate as some of the onshore world, and Bermuda is not that. So we're grounded in insurance and reinsurance. So as a result, our regulatory standard has to be much higher than any other offshore jurisdiction in the world. And so the Bermuda Monetary Authority is a financial regulator in Bermuda, and the regulatory authority is the regulator for telecommunications and energy. So because we're a small place, these organizations actually work directly with companies, and they help to understand what your business is looking to do, and they work with you to make sure that there's bespoke regulatory clarity around doing business in the country. So, whether it's the BDA connecting you with your lawyers, introducing you to the regulators so that they have an understanding of what type of business you're looking to bring to the country, our organization will help facilitate that. The last two pieces of the technology puzzle in Bermuda is the government. And I think we are blessed right now in this moment with having a technologist that's running our country. So if you come to Bermuda and you want to take a taxi, there's an app called Hitch. And the person who built the app is now the premier of Bermuda. So, I don't think Donald Trump was writing code before he went into politics, or any other I think government leader I think in the world will have the same sort of technical background as Premier David Burt. And so he was our youngest ever premier or head of state. Took office when he was 38 years old. He's now 40. And so because of his entry into the leadership role in the government, we've been able to drive innovation and adoption of legislation and technology in Bermuda much faster than anything anyone else has seen. We weren't really in the game until that government came into place in 2017, but we quickly, once we found out that people were launching ICOs in the jurisdiction without any regulation, we quickly put that in place. So I think I was in Silicon Valley in August 2017. By May 2018, we had the first legislation governing ICOs and STOs. By the end of the summer, we had some other legislation around digital asset businesses and banking. So you can see that Bermuda, because it's so small, we can be nimble and really deploy the type of environment that businesses need to flourish. The FinTech business unit, they are sort of that underpinning group that helps to guide policy and drive innovation in Bermuda. So there's a lot of expertise and knowledge within the FinTech business unit that really helps us to understand what's the next iteration of innovation that we need to be focused on in the country. So if I move forward to the next slide, Bermuda is traditionally an insurance hub. We have extreme talent in Bermuda. This is probably the only country on the planet where kids want to become actuaries, and that's like a rock star job. So it's a very strange place. So there's quite a bit of talent on the financial services side, and we're seeing a lot of that cross-pollination now that we're moving into technology, where those skill sets are really attractive to exchanges, wallet providers, and any digital asset business that's looking to base itself in Bermuda. Bermuda really focuses on captive insurance. That was the first type of insurance that we started, and that's where you identify risks in your business that you're not going to pay out on, and you create your own insurance company, and then you self-insure those risks. And then people use those captive insurance structures to become investment vehicles and invest back into your business. So the captive insurance model is one that's very attractive. I think we have 70% of the global market is based in Bermuda. But we also have an extremely robust property and casualty insurance market. We cover the big bangs. And I think 35% of Lloyd's capacity is based in Bermuda. The first claim for 9/11 was paid from Bermuda. 30% of the 9/11 claims were paid by Bermuda insurance companies. So you can see we have a very close relationship with the US, Europe, and the rest of the world when we cover those big bangs that hit the big countries. This slide is really showing Solvency II equivalency. The only countries with Solvency II equivalency are Japan, Bermuda, and Switzerland. And that equivalency means that the insurance companies in Bermuda are treated like local companies in Europe and the US. And this is huge for our market. We have access to the biggest players, the biggest markets in the world, and that legitimacy is really what Bermuda is all about. This model is what we're looking to deploy in the fintech sector now. We want the companies that base themselves in Bermuda to be able to access the largest markets on the planet. And in the meantime, while those countries haven't figured out how to govern digital assets and cryptocurrencies, once they do, I think a lot of companies are going to be in trouble because they've chosen to domicile their businesses in jurisdictions that are not legit, that are not legitimate, that don't care where the source of funds are coming from, that don't care who the beneficial owners are of those businesses. So we're really looking at this in a long-term way where that once those big countries are really ready to play in this sector, they're going to look at the companies that are based in Bermuda and say, okay, yes, we know you've been doing this thing the right way. You get access to our markets. So as you see, these are the pieces of legislation that really governs the digital asset regulatory framework. In the summer of 2018, Bermuda launched the ICO Act, which is really just an amendment to our Business Act. And we're actually in the process of looking at this one where we plan to hopefully repeal it and replace it with a much more robust version, and won't have the word ICO in it as well. But typically, we don't differentiate between SCOs and ICOs. The big focus is around AML, KYC risks to your business, and where the source of funds are coming from. So the same requirements for an ICO will be the same requirements that you'll have for an SCO. We also introduced legislation for digital asset businesses, and that for us is more important because it requires to have people on the ground, and obviously we're looking to grow our capacity and attract individuals to Bermuda to live, work, and play. And then we also introduced legislation around banking. Currently in Bermuda, all of our banks have access to global markets through the U.S. banking network, and so our banks are not allowed to bank companies that are working in the digital asset sector. And so actually my connection to MOBI is through Jewel, who are looking to develop a solution for our digital asset banking gap right now. But we have developed relationships with Signature Bank, Deltec, and Silvergate, where we're able to refer clients that are basing themselves in Bermuda to have access to those banks in the US and in Bahamas so that they can set up bank accounts and get on with their business. So the regulatory clarity that your business would get in a place like Bermuda, I think, is critical. And Bermuda is all about having the best practice. We've been coining the term the Bermuda Standard, which is one that we hope is adopted globally. But digital asset issuers, businesses, and banks have a clear regulatory path for blockchain and fintech companies. And the 4 risks that we focus on are business, cyber, custody, and compliance. The regulatory framework can be broken down in a simple way by submitting a business plan to the regulator. And then if you're approved for a license, you can operate within the scope of that approved business plan without having to seek any additional approvals. The regulator will work with you to understand and make sure that that's a robust business plan and that you're going to be able to adhere to what you say and have those procedures lined out in your business. But the framework does not exempt you from the laws of other jurisdictions. So what it does do is provide clarity to your customers, the legislators in your home jurisdictions, and investors that your business will be following the top standards and best practices set forth by the Bermuda framework. This allows you to freely target jurisdictions where there are no regulatory barriers and launch and grow your business and scale your business. It also enables you and us to educate legislators and regulators in other jurisdictions so that they can see what we're doing in Bermuda and adopt it back in their own home countries. So this is our innovative model, and it's a 3-step, 3-tiered model. It's relatively simple. You have your innovation hub, which is our regulatory alpha testing environment. It's designed for private tests amongst a known set of opt-in and opt-out users, and allows you to experiment and develop your business model and early procedures and to provide guidance for our regulator for how you'll operate once you're actually licensed. The second step is the sandbox, and that's our regulatory testing and beta testing environment. And this represents a limited scale license that allows you to have outlined satisfactory risk management procedures and enables you to demonstrate the application of them and practice and improve them as necessary in line with the regulatory requirements by the BMA. The full license allows you to produce your product in our regulatory environment, and that license allows your business to have the flexibility to operate your business and grow and scale globally from Bermuda. So the only business right now that has a full license is Circle. And so we have set an extremely high standard So it's been an interesting journey to see companies try to achieve that, as opposed to some of the other jurisdictions that they've been operating out of. And it's the positive thing is that everyone's been very happy to go through that process, because they understand the benefit to their business in the long term. But I think one of the big kind of key highlight moments right now is the currency standard initiative. And as I said, last year the big talking point for Bermuda was the legislation. This year it's, okay, how are we actually going to attract companies to do real things in Bermuda? And the currency standard initiative is that. The core challenge that we face in the fintech industry today is that we don't really have that much clarity. There's not many environments that enable companies to innovate comfortably under a supervision of a competent regulator. Companies need an environment that allows them to showcase what is possible with this technology while managing the business, compliance, cyber, and custody risks that may arise. They need a place where they can drive comfort and understanding amongst global regulators and legislators that this technology is not something that they should fear. Our hope is that we can transform Bermuda into a global innovation sandbox to advance the digitization and unbundling of traditional finance to drive increased access to financial services and act as a showcase model for other jurisdictions to copy. So now that the legislative foundation is in place, the next iteration was to kick off the stablecoin initiative. The government of Bermuda, as Tram mentioned, is committed to accept for payment of government taxes, fees, and services one-to-one US dollar-backed stablecoins that get licensed in Bermuda. We will then explore paying out these stablecoins to civil servants and contractors who are willing to accept them, and also use the stablecoin for social programs. We're going to invite foreign regulators and legislators to come to Bermuda to witness what is possible and to gain an understanding of how they can adopt this technology and work with the private sector to increase financial inclusion and access in their own jurisdictions. Our hope is that we can showcase to the world that there is a clear path for regulatory clarity around this industry by focusing on the risks and using Bermuda's small, contained ecosystem as a place where foreign regulators and legislators can come to touch, see, feel, use, and ultimately understand the benefits of this revolutionary technology. We currently have the support of Circle, Coinbase with their US dollar coin and Center Consortium, Binance with BUSD, Trust Token with TUSD, Stably with USDS, and Hub Culture's Ultra UUSD. On the open financial ecosystem front, we have the support of Celsius Network, it's a deposit and lending payments company, Salt Lending, a digital asset lending and institutional custodian, MAPay, a healthcare payments provider, Sablier, a payroll solutions provider, and Stablehouse, a stablecoin exchange provider. So we have a nice, robust group of companies that are helping us to deploy this stablecoin initiative, and we're hoping that we're going to see a lot of growth from this, and I think we'll chat a little bit about how this can be really deployed and accessed for the mobility sector. And finally, my favorite slide, obviously with the shorts, is we're going to be positioning ourselves as a globally compliant jurisdiction with regulatory standards that are set forth by the FATF guidelines. We intend to achieve the highest standard possible while creating an environment that's compliant businesses have the flexibility to survive. We take a uniquely Bermudian approach to achieving this, which can be illustrated by our famous Bermuda shorts. For example, that's a British suit. You see the cut, that's a British suit. That's the hallmark of traditional finance, like Wall Street or at Lloyd's of London. Meanwhile, the crypto industry, on the opposite end, you have a spectrum of the most extreme outlooks which aims to disrupt all regulatory compliance in an anything-goes, libertarian-style approach. Then, of course, you have the world of tech bro finance, whose move fast and break things mantra doesn't fit well into the highly regulated space of global finance. So Bermuda's approach is to recognize that in order to achieve market access with top-tier jurisdictions, a high standard of regulatory compliance is necessary. However, we do also recognize that times change and there's a need to be progressive. Like with our shorts, there are circumstances when it's simply too hot outside to wear long pants that don't make sense. And we recognize that it's possible to be compliant while also being flexible and progressive. This flexible approach is what really defines Bermuda, and it's a hallmark of our fintech ecosystem. This isn't to say we're not open to cryptocurrencies and alternative payment approaches. We simply have an expectation that any companies that choose to come to Bermuda commit to meeting our high standards of regulatory compliance. And we welcome all companies serious about developing the future of open finance to come to Bermuda and work with us to turn Bermuda into a global innovation sandbox and to showcase to the world the potential of this exciting new technology. Our hope is that we can leverage the foundation of innovation and regulation that are the twin pillars of the Bermuda ecosystem to partner with MOBI and its members to showcase to the world the impact that mobility innovation can have on a society. And Crystal, I'd be happy to have a chat just to dig a little bit deeper into what we're doing.
So I haven't been to Bermuda. My mother has, and I really want to go. And you've given me some good reasons, I think. You've pitched Bermuda as a sandbox, and if I can distill a few things that were my takeaways from that.
Sure.
Let's see. You've got a premier who not only wrote the mobility app but ran the company. All right, so he seems like a good fit with us. You got really cool business attire. You're trying to take the lead in sort of a new financial, whole multi-trillion-dollar sector, potentially. Only, unlike many of the other small companies that want to do that, right, you guys have actually done it before and shown that good governance can build a global industry. You did it in reinsurance. And finally, you're much nicer to visit in the wintertime than Estonia, and even nicer in the summertime than Dubai. So other than that, so tell me a little bit about what's Bermuda about?
I mean, yeah, exactly that. I think we have been lucky in our success in the past, but I think it's born out of, as I said, that location, and so the constraints that we have and that you grow up with in Bermuda, where we don't have any lakes, we don't have access to fresh water, so we had to design a sustainable roof system where we have limestone roofs that everyone has to have, and there's natural filtration where we are able to generate our own fresh water. So as a result, now that we're seeing with climate change, the severity of hurricanes is increasing. Bermuda is not really as worried as the Caribbean because all of our houses have these limestone roofs. And so we're well protected because every house is built well. So the foundation of business and finance in Bermuda is something that's not something we're just starting to talk about. It's something that's based on something that we innovated with in the 60s with captive insurance, and that we've built on that foundation to the new financial model and understanding that this is going to really change all aspects of business, every industry, and we're embracing that.
Question for you. In the old economy, right, it was all about where you produced things and sold them. It was all about the size of your domestic market and the wealth of your domestic market. Now we're moving into a new age, a digital age, where we're providing digital services potentially to the world. Does a small country like Bermuda have an advantage in that world?
Definitely.
Yeah.
The distributed nature of teams and business today has fundamentally changed sort of how we see the world. I think people are much more global. The internet obviously has changed that. And a dot on the map like Bermuda can really be nimble enough to listen to what business is telling governments and actually iterate and adopt those changes in a sustainable and smart way. So I think what we obviously cherry-picked what we saw around the world and the best examples of countries that were deploying ICOs and embracing that, but we just did it in a way that we thought was that fit Bermuda. And then we also went a step further where we went to the Digital Asset Business Act and with the Banking Act, and then this year with the Stablecoin Initiative. So
okay, so you heard a lot from our members today about payments and car wallets and thinking that is sort of the next huge opportunity. Mm-hmm. So this isn't really, our members don't really care about issuing a digital currency and seeing it go to the moon and getting a bunch of Lamborghinis. Mm-hmm. So what do you think about what is Bermuda's advantages sort of for that more sandbox focused, real business?
I mean, for us, it's about the companies really understanding that it's the framework and the ecosystem has been put in place for them to flourish. So whether it's cryptocurrency exchanges or whether it's wallets for the next generation automobile, I think it's that same framework will be leveraged. And so where you can actually talk to government, and I can set you up a meeting with the premier in a few days and a meeting with the regulator who's going to regulate your business, and in a day or two you can see everybody you need to see in the whole country and understand what you need to then go do for your business to operate. There's no place like that. I mean,
I can't even do that in Los Angeles.
we had a very important CEO come into Bermuda, and he flew in from New York on the morning flight. We had everyone meet in the Ministry of Finance. He had a 3-hour meeting and flew back that afternoon. And he met with everybody he needs to meet in one go. So okay. I mean, the access and the ability to really get the government to understand what you're trying to do and then leverage the sandbox environment. I think Bermuda has always been a place where you should be scaling globally. I think Tram touched on some of the tax benefits on some of the states in the U.S. Obviously, there's no income tax in Bermuda. There's no capital gains. I mean, those things we don't talk about anymore because they're pretty standard. The things we talk about are the regulatory robustness of the jurisdiction, because the competition for us is not about on the profitability side, it's on the legitimacy side. And we want to partner with your members because they are the creme de la creme. And we're looking to attract the best companies in the world that are innovating to Bermuda and to do it from Bermuda so that we can become a showcase island and a showcase country.
So if I understand the current regime already with stablecoins is one of our members could, for example, put a wallet in a car, as long as it's a US dollar stable token, they could legally pay for transactions.
Yes, that's correct.
In Bermuda, they could drive through a McDonald's window and pay for their burger.
We don't have McDonald's, but yeah.
Okay, if they did. All right.
No U.S. franchises.
All right, great.
But yeah, I mean, the only caveat to that is that stablecoin company would have to get regulated. So right now, Circle's the only licensed entity that has a stablecoin, but we have a number that we're talking to and that we expect in the next 3 to 6 months will achieve the same regulatory certainty as Circle.
Okay. You got time for an inclination to take a question or two from the
audience? Sure, I'd love to.
All right. Anybody have a question for Bermuda? Kevin?
Hello, I believe a few years ago, Bermuda had an electronic vehicle registration program for all cars. They had to get an electronic license plate, basically. That was the rumor we had heard in the industry that I'm in. And is that true? And if that's true, that was really innovative, because I think Bermuda was the first country in the world to adopt an electronic vehicle registration process.
Yeah, we have, and I think we want to see if we can continue to develop that start. I think the Department of Motor Vehicles is the most widely used online website for the government in Bermuda. So that people are used to doing things electronically as it relates to their car and their vehicles in the country. So we've got a good foundation, but we are missing a few things where we don't have Uber or Lyft or any ride-sharing companies based in Bermuda. So there's an opportunity for us to kind of see what went wrong in some of those examples and then figure out how to do it in a new, smarter way using digital currencies as well. So we're hoping that you guys can help us figure out what a country should look like and how a society really deals with the impact of this technology. So one of my sort of concerns or kind of very interesting problems that I hope you guys can help us to solve is what do we do with the people that are displaced by driverless cars or banks that are laying off people because they don't need the actual human staff. So that, I think there's no country that's really had a 5-year test where they've put this stuff in place and then they can show how this impacted people. And I think we've got a 63,000 population. We've got 48,000 vehicles on the road, 23,000 cars. So we know exactly how many vehicles we have per person, and we kind of track that, right? So anything that comes into the country, we know about. It's not like you can just make a car in Bermuda, right? We don't make anything. Everything we do is financial services. So it's a great test bed to see how can we deploy more technology into the automotive sector, and then how can we really track using data how that impacts a society and what that does for people, and if all of our assumptions are actually correct.
So one of the really nice features of a sandbox, any sandbox, is you can ring fence it and isolate it and make sure that all of the things that you need to control are controlled. You can't get any more controlled and ring fenced than an island.
Yeah, exactly. I think technically we're the second most isolated island in the world, so I think it's pretty ring fenced.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Going off of job creation, do you have any metrics on how these programs are impacting Bermuda in creating jobs since you've been launching these initiatives?
It's still a bit too early. So right now we don't really have any metrics. I can say we've got 89 companies have incorporated in the last year and a half. The banking challenge is a big impediment to true impact. So we've seen 31 jobs be created. And so my expectation is once we do have a fully functioning bank on island, there's a few big players that have committed to doing things in Bermuda and having Bermuda be their center of excellence for compliance, those sorts of things. We're looking forward to that, but right now we're still waiting for that banking solution to be in place on the ground. But I expect things will significantly accelerate once that happens. 2020 for us is really about POCs, and we want to see some real use cases on the ground. So up until now, it's been more about putting the frameworks in place, but now we're ready to go. So I'm expecting to see a lot of cool stuff happening next year.
Okay, great.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks. As I mentioned at lunch, I was in Bermuda for the first time last week, and fabulous. So one of my experiences was using public transportation. So I know you've touched upon all the business side, and was just curious if you guys are looking at the kind of mobility and transportation, because one thing I noticed, a couple things, is so I took the ferry from the cruise port to Hamilton, and some people were using like the bus coins, which you're losing money on then, and then also I took the bus to the beach, and then the rain came, and so there was all these people at the bus stop, and so people had to wait another 30 minutes because not everyone could fit on, and I didn't see many people put any bus fare in at all, and so I was like thinking in my head at that time that there are opportunities for leveraging technology to help on the public side. Was curious what you guys are doing.
100%. I mean, right now, I'll even start with, they're looking at electric buses as a start, but our fleet we've got half the size of a fleet that we did 20 years ago. And because, half the buses need maintenance, and just because of finance issues, they're not being maintained. So there's a shortage of buses on the road. There's an underutilization of ferries right now, so people aren't actually using the ferries as much as they should, and it's amazing to kind of travel by ferry on the island. So the first step, I think they've already put out an RFP for electric buses to replace the fleet. My hope is that we can accelerate the conversation very quickly to get those mobile payments in place with the public transport.
Sounds like you need a new source of finance for public infrastructure.
Yes, and I think it was 2 years ago they did create an infrastructure fund in the country. So that fund does exist.
I was thinking vehicle wallets and payments for infrastructure, but
yes.
But if you want to tax your people, go ahead.
I think the opportunity to have smart wallets within the buses, within the ferries, those are and also within government vehicles. There's a 200 fleet of vehicles for government employees. So I think those three areas should be our low-hanging fruit for us, and I think we should very quickly be able to deploy the technology and then see what the impact is for tourism and for locals. So definitely, thanks for. Yeah, you definitely got to come back.
One more.
Hi, Kevin. One more, last one.
Kevin, I'm totally sold on the business attire. At the beginning of the year, I was speaking to a member of your group, and they were talking about leveraging your experience in the insurance industry. And they were talking about, in the context at the time, we were discussing applications of blockchain and insurance and bonding insurance. But I was wondering if you had any additional developments or updates there that you could speak to. It sounded very exciting.
Not that I'm aware of. I know my former tech consultant is actually working on developing an insurance business for the digital asset sector. But I mean, the focus for me, at least, and the visibility I have is more around just trying to attract more insurtech startups to Bermuda and to leverage the innovation framework that we've put in place. So, I'm not sure, what's being done on the insurance side around innovation in the technology right now. But we are seeing more and more companies that are leveraging that sandbox environment to build their businesses. The only other thing I would mention that we are putting in place to get more visibility to what companies are doing is that we just kicked off the Bermuda Innovation and Technology Association. And so we have 45 members right now. And so the opportunity and the ability to collaborate and network in a small place like Bermuda is very interesting. The momentum and the energy that we have right now is just so positive. You were there for Tech Week. We had a few folks that are here that were in Bermuda for our first ever Tech Week. And I mean, there's just so much of a collaborative spirit in the island right now that I really encourage you all to kind of seize this moment, because I'm not sure what the next 10 years will look like, but right now we have the head of the country that his passion project is this. We have a fintech work permit that was created to allow you guys to work in Bermuda. If you set up a business, you get 5 work permits automatically when your business is incorporated, so that you can bring your senior leadership team and operate in the jurisdiction. So there's I'm not answering your question, but there's a whole host of things that have been put in place right now to attract this room to bring your businesses to the country, iterate, figure out how it will work, how it will impact customers, and then scale globally from Bermuda with a very attractive tax structure underneath that. So.
All right, so we're going to have a reception in a half an hour or so, and so people can come up and...
Love to talk.
Yeah,
I'd love to talk to
right.
anyone who's interested.
All right, thank you very much, Kevin.
Great, thanks.